I always thought my life with Clara was the kind of steady, unshakable thing you could build a future on. We'd been married 12 years, and though the early spark had dulled into something quieter, it felt reliable. I'm James, a structural engineer, 38, the kind of guy who likes blueprints and predictability. Clara, 35, worked part-time at a boutique downtown, her auburn hair and quick smile still turning heads. We had a daughter, Lily, 7, with Clara's eyes and my stubborn streak. Our house in suburban Raleigh was modest but ours. A 2-story with a backyard swing set I'd built myself. Life wasn't perfect, but it was good, or so I thought until the cracks started showing. It began with small things. Clara started staying late at the boutique, claiming inventory or special orders. I didn't mind at first. I was often buried in project deadlines myself, sketching beams and load-bearing walls until midnight. But then her phone started buzzing more. Texts she'd glance at and silence with a tight smile. "Work stuff," she'd say, brushing it off. I trusted her. Why wouldn't I? She'd always been the one to plan our anniversary dinners, to leave little notes in my lunchbox. But the notes stopped, and the dinners turned into takeout she'd pick up on her way home, distracted. One night, I came home early from a site visit. Lily was at a friend's sleepover, and the house was dark except for a faint glow upstairs. I figured Clara was reading in bed, but her car wasn't in the driveway. Odd, since she'd texted she was home. I climbed the stairs, my work boots heavy on the hardwood, and found our bedroom empty. Her phone was on the nightstand, buzzing. I don't know why I picked it up, instinct, maybe. The screen lit up with a message from Tessa, her coworker. "He's waiting. Don't be late." My stomach twisted. Tessa didn't work nights. I scrolled up, just a little, and saw fragments. "Missed you last time. We're the red one." My hands shook. This wasn't inventory. I sat on the bed, staring at the phone like it was a loaded gun. Clara walked in 20 minutes later, her hair mussed, lipstick faintly smudged. She froze when she saw me. "James? You're early." Her voice was too high, too bright. I held up the phone. "Who's waiting?" I asked, calm as I could manage. She stammered something about a client, a special order, but her eyes darted to the floor. I didn't push. Not then. I just nodded and said I was tired, needed a shower. But that night, lying beside her, I didn't sleep. I started planning. The next week, I turned into someone I didn't recognize. A man obsessed with answers. I didn't confront Clara again. I wanted proof, something solid I could hold on to when the inevitable fight came. I started small, checking her phone when she showered, but she'd gotten clever. Messages deleted, passcode changed. So I dug deeper. I called the boutique one afternoon, pretending to be a customer asking for Clara. "Oh, she's off today," the girl on the line chirped. My heart sank. Clara had left that morning in her usual rush, purse slung over her shoulder, saying she'd be home late. Off today. I drove by the boutique anyway, circling the block like some amateur detective. Her car wasn't there. I parked and waited, sipping cold coffee, until I saw Tessa pull up in her beat-up Civic. She didn't go inside, just stood by the door, texting, then left 10 minutes later. I followed her. It felt wrong, tailing someone through traffic, but I couldn't stop. She led me to a gym downtown, one of those trendy places with neon signs and overpriced smoothies. Clara's car was in the lot. I watched her step out, not in her usual skirt and blouse, but leggings and a tight tank top, her hair pulled back. She didn't carry a gym bag. Inside, I stayed back, blending with the crowd. Clara didn't head for the treadmills. She slipped into a side room, spin class, the sign said. I peeked through the window. There she was, laughing with a guy I'd never seen before. Tall, broad-shouldered, maybe 40, with a jawline that looked carved from stone. He leaned close, whispering something that made her giggle, her hand brushing his arm. My chest tightened. This wasn't a workout. This was something else, something deliberate. I left before I did something stupid like storming in. Back home, I started piecing it together. His name was Marcus. I found it later, digging through an old receipt Clara left in her purse. Marcus Holt, personal trainer, according to the gym's website. Testimonials gushed about his hands-on approach. I bet the betrayal wasn't just the act. It was the lying, the secrecy, the way she'd come home and kiss me like nothing had changed. I thought about Lily, about the life we'd built, and anger started simmering, slow and steady. I didn't want to yell or throw things. I wanted something colder, something that'd hurt worse than she'd hurt me. I couldn't look at Clara the same way anymore. Every morning, she'd pour coffee, chatter about Lily's school projects, and I'd nod, forcing a smile while my mind replayed that gym scene, her laugh, his hand on her waist. I kept quiet, though. Confronting her now would just get me lies or tears, and I wasn't ready for either. I needed to know how deep this went, how long she'd been playing me for a fool. So I watched her, studied her like she was one of my engineering problems. Every move a clue, every excuse a stress point I could test. I installed an app on my phone to track hers. It wasn't hard, our accounts were linked from years back, and she hadn't changed the password. The first ping came that afternoon. Not the boutique, not the gym, but a residential address 10 miles away. I drove there, parking a block over. It was a decent neighborhood, split-level homes, manicured lawns. Her car sat in the driveway of a gray house with blue shutters. I waited, hands gripping the steering wheel. An hour later, she came out, smoothing her hair, followed by Marcus. He walked her to the car, leaned in for a kiss, long, slow, like they had all the time in the world. My knuckles went white. That night, she came home humming, tossing her keys on the counter. "Good day," I asked, casual as I could. "Oh, just the usual," she said, not meeting my eyes. I wanted to smash something, but I didn't. Instead, I started digging online. Marcus Holt wasn't just a trainer, he had a wife, Emily, and 2 kids, judging by his social media. Emily posted family photos, all smiles and matching sweaters. Clara wasn't in them, but she didn't need to be. I knew where she fit. The betrayal wasn't hypothetical anymore. It was real, fleshed out in suburban driveways and stolen afternoons. Couldn't sleep. I lay there, her breathing soft beside me, and thought about how she'd dismantled us. Not just me, Lily too. What happens when your mom's a liar? I didn't have an answer, but I had rage, and it was growing roots. Revenge wasn't a scream or a fist. It was a plan, precise and unyielding, like the structures I built. I'd make her feel this, every jagged edge of it. The days blurred into a routine of watching and waiting. I tracked Clara's phone, mapped her lies, boutique shifts that didn't exist, errands that ended at Marcus's house. I stopped asking questions. She'd just spin more stories, and I was done swallowing them. Instead, I gathered evidence. Photos from my car window, time-stamped locations, even a voice memo from one night when she forgot to hang up after calling Tessa, and I heard Marcus's low laugh in the background. It was a dossier of her deceit, and I kept it locked in a folder on my laptop, password protected. I met Emily Holt by accident, or maybe it wasn't. I started going to the gym, not to exercise but to observe. Marcus was there, strutting around, all charm and sweat. Emily showed up one morning, dropping off a kid's backpack he'd forgotten. She was petite, blonde, with tired eyes and a nervous smile. I introduced myself as a new member, made small talk. "Marcus seems busy," I said, testing the water. "Oh, always," she laughed, but there was an edge to it. I wondered if she suspected anything. I didn't tell her, not yet. She was a piece on the board, and I wasn't ready to move her. Clara noticed I was quieter, but she didn't push. Maybe she was relieved I wasn't prying. She kept up her act, kissing Lily goodnight, asking about my day like she cared. It made me sick, how easy it was for her. I started sleeping in the guest room, claiming back pain from work. She didn't argue. That distance gave me space to think, to refine what I'd do. Divorce wasn't enough. She'd get half of everything, play the victim. No, I wanted her to lose more than money. I wanted her to lose herself. I started small, testing her. I'd mention Marcus casually. "Saw a trainer at the gym today. Real smooth talker." She'd stiffen, change the subject. I'd leave my laptop open, baiting her to snoop, but she never did. She was too wrapped up in her bubble, thinking I was clueless. That's when I decided Marcus wasn't just her weakness, he was my leverage. If she'd torched our life for him, I'd use him to burn hers down. The plan took shape over weeks, meticulous as any blueprint I'd ever drawn. I didn't want Clara to just hurt. I wanted her to unravel, to see everything she valued slip through her fingers. Marcus was the key, but he wasn't alone in this. Emily, his wife, was the wild card. I dug into her life. Public records, social media, little crumbs she didn't know she'd left. She worked at a daycare, loved gardening, had a sister in Charlotte. Normal stuff, but useful. I needed her on my side, not as a friend but as a weapon. I approached her again, this time at a coffee shop near the gym. I'd seen her there before, scrolling her phone while Marcus trained clients. I sat down uninvited, kept my voice low. "Emily, right? I'm James. We met at the gym." She looked up, startled but polite. I didn't waste time. "I know about Marcus and my wife, Clara." Her face went pale, coffee cup trembling in her hand. "What are you talking about?" she whispered, but her eyes said she'd suspected it. I slid my phone across the table. Photos of Clara leaving their house, Marcus's arm around her. Emily stared, silent, then pushed the phone back. "Why tell me?" "Because I'm done being the fool," I said. "And I think you are too." She didn't cry, didn't yell, just nodded, like she'd been waiting for the push. I told her my idea. Expose them, but not in some loud, messy scene. Something quieter, sharper. She listened, her jaw tight, and finally said, "I'm in." That was it, my ally forged in the same betrayal. Back home, Clara was oblivious, humming as she cooked dinner. I watched her, feeling the weight of what was coming. She'd built her little world of lies, but I was about to dismantle it, piece by cruel piece. Emily and I had a plan, and it was only the beginning. Emily became my shadow partner, a quiet force fueled by the same betrayal I carried. We met twice more at that coffee shop, plotting over lukewarm lattes. She didn't want Marcus back. She wanted him humbled, stripped of the swagger he wore like a second skin. I wanted Clara to feel the same, to watch her perfect little escape crumble. Our plan wasn't about confrontation. It was about exposure, slow and deliberate, like tightening a vice until they couldn't breathe. We'd use their own lies against them, turn their secret into a spotlight. First, we needed more. Emily gave me access to Marcus's email. His password was their anniversary date, a detail that made her laugh bitterly. I found threads between him and Clara, buried in a folder labeled Clients. They weren't careful, messages about meeting times, playful banter, even a photo of Clara in a dress I'd bought her, captioned "For you." My stomach churned, but I saved it all. Emily found bank statements too. Marcus had been siphoning money from their joint account, small amounts probably for Clara. Gifts, dinners, whatever kept her smiling. It was ammunition, and we stockpiled it. I started leaving hints for Clara, subtle enough to unnerve her. I'd mention the gym in passing, thinking of joining, heard the trainers are real hands-on. Her fork would pause midair, eyes flickering. I'd hum tunes she'd sung after her late shifts, watching her squirm. She didn't ask why I was different. Maybe she was too scared to look closer. Lily noticed, though. "Why's Mommy quiet?" she asked one night, coloring at the kitchen table. I hugged her, said grown-ups get tired. Inside, I was seething. Clara's choices were stealing Lily's world too, and she didn't even see it. Emily and I agreed. The first strike would be public but disguised. She'd host a barbecue, a casual thing for gym folks and neighbors. Marcus loved showing off, and Clara would tag along, thinking it was safe. I'd be there too, the oblivious husband, playing my part. It was set for Saturday, and as the day approached, I felt a cold calm settle in. This wasn't rage anymore, it was purpose. The barbecue was a sunny affair, all laughter and clinking glasses in Emily's backyard. Marcus grilled burgers, apron tied tight, grinning like he owned the place. Clara arrived late, her sundress swaying as she hugged Emily. A quick, fake embrace. I stood by the cooler, beer in hand, watching them orbit each other. Neighbors milled around. Kids chased a soccer ball. and Lily tugged my sleeve, asking for ice cream. I smiled, handed her a cone, and kept my eyes on the game board unfolding. Emily played her role perfectly. She chatted with Clara, all warmth and small talk, then called Marcus over. "Honey, tell them about that new client you've been training," she said, voice sweet as syrup. Marcus faltered just for a second before launching into a vague story. Clara sipped her lemonade, avoiding my gaze. I stepped in casual. "Oh, I've been meaning to ask. Do trainers ever get close with clients? Like, personal close?" The air shifted. Marcus coughed. Clara's glass froze halfway to her lips. Emily laughed, light and sharp. "Oh, I'm sure it happens." Later, Emily pulled out her phone, showing photos from a gym event she'd mocked up. Snaps I'd taken of Marcus and Clara, cropped just enough to look innocent but suggestive. "Look at this teamwork," she said, loud enough for neighbors to hear. Heads turned. Clara's face went pink. Marcus muttered something about getting more ice. I watched them unravel thread by thread. No one suspected Emily knew. They just saw a happy wife sharing pics. But Clara felt it, I could tell. Her eyes darted to me, searching. I smiled back, blank and steady. That night, she was quiet in the car. "Fun day," I said, testing. "Yeah," she mumbled, staring out the window. I let the silence grow, heavy and sharp. She didn't know how much I had, how much Emily had. She thought she was still safe. She wasn't. After the barbecue, Clara's cracks widened. She started texting more, glancing at me like I might lunge for her phone. I didn't need to. Emily and I had synced up, sharing updates like generals plotting a siege. Marcus was rattled too. Emily said he'd been short-tempered, asking if she'd noticed anything off lately. She played dumb, kept him guessing. We weren't done, we'd only lit the fuse. The next move was financial. Emily found more withdrawals, hundreds Marcus couldn't explain. She didn't confront him. She called their bank instead, reported fraud. It wasn't true, but it froze their accounts, left Marcus scrambling to prove it was him. He couldn't admit the truth without exposing Clara. So he stewed, stressed and snappy. I hit Clara's side too. Our savings account, joint of course, suddenly needed restructuring. I moved most of it to a new account, citing tax planning. She didn't question it, too distracted to notice how little was left. I upped the pressure at home. I'd leave Marcus's gym flyers on the counter, circled in red like I was considering a membership. "Looks fun," I'd say, watching her fidget. Once, I accidentally played one of her voicemails aloud. Marcus's voice, quick and low, cut off mid-sentence. "Wrong number," she blurted, snatching the phone. I nodded, let it drop. She was a tightrope walker losing balance, and I wasn't catching her. Emily reported back. Marcus was paranoid, snapping at clients, losing bookings. His perfect life was fraying, and Clara felt it too. She came home late one night, eyes red, claiming allergies. I didn't buy it. Lily asked why Mommy was sad, and Clara snapped. First time she'd ever raised her voice at her. I held Lily close, told her it was okay. Inside, I was steeling myself. The big hit was coming, and it'd be surgical. The gym was Marcus's pride, his kingdom. Emily and I decided to take it down a peg. She'd overheard him bragging about extra sessions with clients. Code for Clara, we figured. I dug into the gym's online reviews, found a pattern. Glowing praise, but a few buried complaints about unprofessional conduct. Anonymous, easy to dismiss. Not anymore. I created fake accounts, posted detailed reviews, nothing explicit, just enough to raise eyebrows. "Trainer got too personal," one said. "Felt uncomfortable with the attention." Another. Emily spread them on local forums, seeded doubt. Word got around fast. Clients dropped off. The gym manager called Marcus in for a meeting. Emily heard him ranting about lies over the phone, blaming trolls. Clara felt the ripple. She started pacing at home, chewing her nails, a habit she'd quit years ago. "Something wrong?" I'd ask, all concern. "Just work stress," she'd mutter. I'd nod, pour her wine, let her stew. She didn't know I was the storm. Then came the mail. Emily had a friend at the bank accidentally send Marcus a statement. Highlighted transactions. No explanation. He flipped, accused Emily of spying. She denied it, cried, played the wounded wife. He bought it, but the seed was planted. Clara got her own surprise. I forgot to pay her car insurance. Let it lapse. She found out when a tow truck showed up, claiming a repossession mix-up. She yelled at me, flustered, and I apologized, calm, clueless. Must have slipped my mind. Their worlds were shrinking, and they didn't even see the walls closing in. Emily and I met again, her eyes bright with something like vengeance. They're cracking, she said. I agreed. It wasn't enough, not yet. We had one more card, the cruelest one, and it was almost time to play it. Clara's birthday was the perfect stage. She'd always loved a fuss, cake, gifts, Lily's handmade cards. This year, I planned something different. Emily and I had synced the final blow. A reveal so quiet, so precise. It had cut deeper than any shouting match. I invited Marcus and Emily to the party. Told Clara it was a surprise for new friends. She hesitated, eyes wide, voice shaky, but couldn't say no without tipping her hand. Great, I said, smiling. It'll be memorable. The day came, crisp and bright. Our backyard buzzed with neighbors, Lily's classmates, a bounce house for the kids. Marcus arrived, stiff in a polo shirt, Emily beside him with a tray of cookies. Clara greeted them, too cheerful, her laugh brittle. I watched her hug Marcus. An awkward, quick squeeze, then dart inside to check the food. Emily caught my eye, nodded. We were ready. Mid-party, I called everyone for a toast. To Clara, I said, raising my glass. 12 years, a beautiful daughter, a life I thought I knew. The crowd chuckled, but Clara's smile faltered. I pulled out my phone, connected it to the Bluetooth speaker. Found this old voicemail, I lied, pressing play. Marcus's voice spilled out. Low, intimate, saying Clara's name, then a laugh. Silence fell. Clara froze, glass slipping from her hand, shattering on the patio. Marcus stammered. That's not. But I cut him off. Funny story, right? Emily stepped forward, voice soft but lethal. Oh, Marcus, tell them about your extra sessions. Or should I? She held up printed emails. His words to Clara, tame enough for plausible deniability but damning in context. The neighbors whispered. Lily's teacher frowned. Clara bolted inside, Marcus trailing her, shouting excuses. I didn't follow. I hugged Lily, told her mommy needed a minute. The party died quietly, guests trickling out, leaving whispers behind. That night, Clara sobbed, begged me to listen. I didn't. I'd won this round, her shame was public, her affair a stain everyone could see. But it wasn't over. The real revenge was still coming. After the birthday disaster, Clara's world shrank to a tight, frantic bubble. She stopped leaving the house, claiming headaches or fatigue. The boutique called, her absences piled up, and they let her go. I didn't console her. I just nodded, said, that's rough. Marcus was in his own mess. Emily kicked him out, changed the locks, and the gym fired him after more anonymous complaints surfaced. I heard through Emily he'd moved into a cheap motel, his charm drowned in desperation. They were both sinking, but I wasn't done. I kept Lily close, shielding her from the fallout. She'd ask why mommy was sad, why daddy slept downstairs. I'd distract her with crafts or park trips, but the questions lingered in her wide eyes. Clara tried talking to me that week, cornering me in the kitchen. James, I'm sorry, she whispered, tears streaking her face. It was a mistake. I looked at her, really looked, and saw a stranger. Mistakes don't last months, I said, walking away. She didn't follow. Emily and I met again, this time at her place. Marcus's stuff was boxed in the garage, a testament to her resolve. He keeps calling, she said, sipping tea, begging to come back. I told her Clara was the same, clinging, pleading. We didn't soften. Our plan had one last phase, the deepest cut, and it needed precision. I'd been researching Clara's weak spots, her pride, her need to be admired. She'd always thrived on attention, on being the perfect wife, the glowing mom. I take that away piece by piece. I started with her social circle. She'd avoided everyone since the party, but I didn't. I invited neighbors over, played the wounded husband just enough. Quiet sighs, vague hints. It's been tough, I'd say, letting them fill in the blanks. Word spread. Her phone stopped buzzing with invites. Her book club forgot to tell her about meetings. Isolation crept in, and I watched her wilt, staring out the window like a ghost. The next strike was Lily. Not hurting her, never that, but using her innocence as a mirror for Clara's shame. I enrolled Lily in a new after-school program, one tied to the gym's rival. Clara used to pick her up, but I took over, citing scheduling. Lily loved it, dance classes, new friends, and she'd chatter about it at dinner. Clara's face would tighten, her fork hovering. Sounds fun, she'd mumble, but I'd catch her staring at Lily's leotard. A logo she couldn't miss. It was petty, maybe, but it stung her. Another thread of her old life slipping away. I sold her car next. She hadn't noticed the insurance lapse until it was too late, and I claimed we needed the cash. Tight budget now that you're not working. She protested, but I'd already signed the papers. The buyer drove off with her silver SUV, leaving her stranded. Take the bus, I said, tossing her a schedule. She didn't. She stayed home, pacing, her world shrinking to our four walls. I'd hear her crying at night, soft and broken, but I didn't go to her. She'd built this cage. I was just locking the door. Emily hit Marcus harder. She filed for divorce, citing infidelity, public record, no hiding it. His reputation tanked. Clients he'd clung to bailed. She sent me a photo of him at the motel, unshaven, hauling trash bags. He's nothing now, she texted. I smiled. Clara didn't know yet, but she'd feel it soon. Their little fantasy had been the glue holding them together. Without it, they'd collapse separately. I wanted her to see that, to taste the emptiness she'd chased. I left one last breadcrumb. A fake email from Marcus, sent through a burner account, short, brutal. It's over. You're not worth it. She found it on my laptop, left open by mistake. She didn't confront me, just sat there, staring, her hands trembling. I walked past, said nothing. The trap was set. Clara broke the next morning. I found her in the living room, eyes red, clutching that email printout I'd forgotten to delete. Did you see this? She asked, voice raw. I shrugged, feigning confusion. What's that? She shoved it at me, Marcus's words glaring in black ink. He ended it, she stammered. I read it, slow and deliberate, then handed it back. Guess that's that, I said, flat. She crumpled, sobbing into her hands. I didn't comfort her. I made coffee instead, let her drown in it. She tried calling him. I'd blocked his number on her phone weeks ago, rerouting it to a deadline. She'd whisper into the void, leave messages he'd never hear. I watched her unravel. Day by day, her pride shredded. She'd stare at herself in the mirror, tugging at her hair, muttering about fixing things. There was nothing left to fix. I'd made sure of it. Lily's dance recital came that weekend, and I took her alone. Clara stayed home, claiming a migraine. Tell her I'm proud, she said, weak. I didn't. Emily called. Marcus had hit bottom. He'd lost his car, his savings drained by legal fees. She'd kept the house, the kids, everything he'd valued. He's begging strangers for rides, she said, a laugh in her voice. I pictured Clara and Marcus, twin wrecks, and felt a grim satisfaction. But I wasn't finished with her. I wanted her to see the endgame, to feel every ounce of what she'd tossed aside. I started packing. Not much, just my clothes, Lily's toys, essentials. Clara noticed, panicked. What are you doing? She demanded, following me upstairs. Taking a break, I said, zipping a duffel. Lily deserves better than this. She grabbed my arm, pleading, but I shook her off. You made your choice, I told her. Live with it. I left her standing there, alone in the house she'd ruined. I took Lily to my sister's place in Durham, An hour away. It was temporary, I told myself, a clean slate while I figured out the divorce. Lily adjusted fast. Her resilience a quiet ache in my chest. She'd ask about Mommy, and I'd say, she's sorting some things out. It wasn't a lie. Clara called daily, leaving voicemails I didn't answer. Tears, apologies, promises. I deleted them, kept moving forward. The house stayed hers for now. I'd deal with it later. Emily and I met one last time, a victory lap of sorts. She looked lighter, her smile real. We did it, she said, clinking her coffee mug against mine. Marcus was a ghost. Jobless, friendless, crashing with a cousin who barely tolerated him. Clara was worse. Neighbors gossiped. Her old life had evaporated. Emily showed me a text from a mutual friend. Clara had been seen at the grocery store, disheveled, buying wine and frozen meals. She's a shell, Emily said. I nodded. That was the point. I hired a lawyer, started the papers. No alimony. She'd waived it in our prenup, a detail she'd forgotten. I keep Lily, the savings, most of what mattered. Clara could have the house, the memories, the wreckage. I sent her a single text. Papers coming. Sign them. She didn't reply. I didn't care. The revenge wasn't in the divorce. It was in the slow bleed of her identity. The way I'd stripped her bare without raising my voice. Lily drew me a picture that night. Us at the park, no Mommy. She'll visit soon, I lied, tucking her in. Clara wouldn't, not for a while. She was too lost, too hollowed out. I built this end, brick by cruel brick, and it held strong. She'd never see it coming, even now. Months later, I got the call. Clara had signed the papers, no fight left. The house sold cheap. She'd let it fall apart, windows dirty, yard overgrown. A neighbor told me she'd moved to a one-bedroom across town. Worked nights at a gas station. No boutique, no Marcus, no Lily. I saw her once, by chance, pumping gas, thin, hair dull, eyes avoiding mine. She didn't wave. I didn't either. That was it, the final note of her collapse. Emily thrived. She'd started a garden, taken the kids on a trip. Marcus tried crawling back once. She shut the door in his face. He faded into rumors. Odd jobs, a DUI, nothing left of the man he'd been. I settled in Durham, bought a small place with a swing set for Lily. Work was steady, Lily's laughter a bomb. Clara's name came up less, a ghost fading into the past. I didn't gloat, didn't celebrate. The revenge wasn't loud. It was a quiet, cold thing, a structure I'd engineered to last. Clara hadn't just lost me or Lily. She'd lost herself, every piece she'd valued eroded by her own hands, guided by mine. Lily asked about her once more, and I said, she's finding her way. Maybe she was, maybe not. It didn't matter. One night, I found an old photo. Us at the beach, Clara laughing, Lily tiny in my arms. I stared at it, then tossed it in a drawer. That life was gone, dismantled with precision. I'd rebuilt mine, stronger, cleaner. Clara's wreckage was hers to keep, and that her living in it was the cruelest cut of all.